It endangers my family, it endangers my children, it endangers my extended relatives and my well-wishers, just as it endangers every other Hindu. All other detractors or all detractors of the Hindu society invest in policy, and politics for them is a medium for policy, whereas we simply invest in politics without looking at policy. In a place where supposedly 370 has been revoked, and not even in the valley, in Jammu. One of the first things I pointed out was they're encircling the cantonment of Jammu. How is it that people who come all the way from Burma manage to settle exclusively in Jammu? 2017 we said this. Previously you had only Bangladeshis to contend with. Now you have to deal with Rohingyas as well. And history says both of them come from the same stock. This is no more academic. But law requires political will to be its starting point. The ball is set rolling by political will. Political will is made possible by political incentive or disincentive. When people said Kashmiri Pandit कर क्या रहे थे, वहां से उन्होंने पलायन कैसे किया, वो पलायन नहीं कर रहे थे, उनको वहां से भगाया गया. If Delhi is not safe, tell me which part of the country is safe. हमारे साथ सेल्फी लेना बंद कीजिए. उससे कुछ नहीं होने वाला है. My analysis is that Savarkar resides in our lips, Gandhi in our spine, and Marx in our soul. Because the rule of keep left has not changed. I genuinely believe that the end result of the last 10 years is the utter success of the left. They have successfully proven that even the ones who call themselves on the non-left use Savarkar exclusively for lip service, while having the will of Gandhi in dealing with jihadi terrorism, and while constantly pushing Marx in every realm of our social sphere, specifically in education and history. That has not changed.
So Savarkar
on the lips, Gandhi in the spine, and Marx in the soul. So I say this for very clear reasons, and I'm not saying this because this is wordplay at play. The existence of a right is, first of all, the biggest possible myth in this country. It does not exist. It does not exist whatsoever. It exists in breach, not in default. It exists in the proviso, not in the section, to put it in the lawyer's language. And it's a minuscule proviso which exists in enclaves and islands, not in the mainland. I'm going to be thrown two specific initiatives or two specific projects, the Ram Mandir and 370. This is what people are going to tell me. I will repeat this for abundant public consumption. Ram Mandir was well on its way even before 2014, because the verdict of the Allahabad High Court came when no Hindutva party was in power either at the state or in the center. Because the evidence was so irrefutable, and most importantly, the determination of that case, let's say of the proponents of the case from the Hindu side. Come on, they fought the entire system when the BJP was not a political force to reckon with. They've been doing this for decades and centuries, for God's sakes. So the construction of the Ram Mandir, yes, but the verdict in itself, somebody else must take credit for it. The people who actually worked for it. And it's not just about the lawyers. All the groups that came together to make it possible. 370 in itself was never the goal. It was only a means to an end. Are we anyway close to reaching that end? Is it even remotely in sight? I'm completely with Anand when he says that how much can you expect the society to constantly wake up when it knows that it does not have leaders? Because even in cultural spheres, you need the Pareto principle at work, where you have cultural leadership being provided, thought leadership being provided. Every societal structure of the Hindu system and the Hindu way of life that was meant to provide cultural leadership was systematically destroyed by the independent Indian state by taking forward the colonial policy. Then the entire society has been rendered subservient to the state and to organizations without having their own means to protect themselves in any way, economically, socially, politically, or for that matter, even physically. So at this point, I'm genuinely hoping that out of sheer compulsion, the society will look inward. When I said this from 2014 to 2024, I was being told on social media constantly that this guy has no better thing to do than to constantly criticize those in power. Because I said, okay, let time prove me right. It's not as if I want to be proven right. If I'm wrong, the society benefits. If I'm right, it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate if I'm right, because it doesn't help me in any way. It endangers my family, it endangers my children, it endangers my extended relatives and my well-wishers, just as it endangers every other Hindu. So there is no vested interest or a dog in the race to be proven right, because then I'm investing in my ego as opposed to my own safety and the cause. And the worst part is that we are constantly waiting to celebrate every ephemeral triumph as opposed to looking for long-term policy outcomes. All other detractors or all detractors of the Hindu society invest in policy, and politics for them is a medium for policy, whereas we simply invest in politics without looking at policy. And the educated lot is more in the Hindu society, and uske baad bhi yahi halat hai. I'm blaming both parties, by the way. However, I will make the very clear statement that as long as this facade of normalcy continues, we will be outnumbered in our sleep, in our slumber. We'll be outflanked in our slumber. 3 back-to-back incidents in a place where supposedly 370 has been revoked, and not even in the valley, in Jammu.
4, I think.
Yes. And I'm so sorry for saying this, but I told you so is coming to my mind for a very good reason. 2017, when I delivered a lecture, thanks to Sangam Talks, on the question of Rohingya illegal migration, one of the first things I pointed out was they're encircling the cantonment of Jammu. How is it that people who come all the way from Burma manage to settle exclusively in Jammu? 2017, we said this. Previously, you had only Bangladeshis to contend with. Now you have to deal with Rohingyas as well. And history says both of them come from the same stock. This is no more academic. I completely agree with Vamsi Garu that rearming Hinduism is necessary, but I'm going in slightly literal sense. And I'm making the very clear statement that can anybody accuse us or anybody of us in the last 10 years of not having disseminated enough knowledge for people to awaken? What do you think we've been doing? How many lectures have been spent crying hoarse on the subject? Your survival as a community doesn't matter. Your survival as an individual is the only thing that seems to matter. I'm consciously going to watch the next 5 years for multiple reasons, because I genuinely believe, against the deepest of my, let's say, nature, I'm an optimist to the core, but I'm genuinely going to watch the next 5 years for 2 or 3 things. The demographic inversion is reaching a tipping point in certain sensitive areas. I've never been a fan of cricket, Ashish. Never. Unless it's Pakistan on the other side, that's a different issue altogether. But even then, I find it absolutely absurd for us to invest in that sporting event thinking that they're fighting some kind of a war against Pakistan, because it's not the case. The kind of relationships that they enjoy with each other outside of the game and outside the ground is very different. The rest of us are just idiots to think that there is some kind of a war going on there. I am of the view that, okay, us din cricket chal raha tha, you didn't know, news was still pouring in, so you didn't know. What happened thereafter? How many people reacted to it? How many people expected hard answers from the government? How many people posed uncomfortable questions to the government and saying, what exactly is happening there? We need a census as quickly as possible. Until and unless we have the numbers, we are being led down a dark path with music being played and with garland around us. And that can only lead to Bali ka Bakra from there. The jihadi thrives in peacetime because that time is spent in preparation, whereas that time is spent by Hindus in celebration. And when suddenly you're caught unawares, you have no response mechanisms whatsoever. I certainly believe that there are some aspects of our problems and challenges that can be addressed legally. But law requires political will to be its starting point. The ball is set rolling by political will. Political will is made possible by political incentive or disincentive. As someone who also leads a regular professional life, I'm saying that Hindus are in that unfortunate position where they have no other option but to constantly scream and air their expectations. So in the interest of self-preservation, what are the options and cards on the table that you're actually left with? Almost nothing. Because the reality also is, what are the political options otherwise? Horrendous. If the elections of 2024 proved anything, you really have nobody else to choose from. What a pathetic situation for the largest democracy in the world. So the reality check that the verdict has given to both sides with respect to their respective positions is, according to me, the only silver lining of the outcome of 2024. Most of us remember how 2004 felt. So we should have been relieved that 2024 was not a 2004. But we are actually hoping that this would be a tipping point of sorts, because now is the time that the society also gets to stand up and make itself. So everybody has to go through an internal chintan and manthan in the language that they love to use. I am at this point positively jaded with these discussions. I have no more patience for them because I don't see the point of it. I'm just hoping that the actual works which will stand the test of time and posterity, such as these, will be constantly produced in the hope that the young generation that is consuming it will draw the right lessons, as opposed to reading pamphlets and propaganda documents. Because the hope is that we actually hold the mirror and speak truth to whoever is in power and say, sorry, our issues are yet to be addressed. When people said Kashmiri Pandit कर क्या रहे थे, वहां से उन्होंने पलायन कैसे किया, वो पलायन नहीं कर रहे थे, उनको वहां से भगाया गया. And don't ever point fingers at the Kashmiri Pandit community ever, because the rest of us are a macrocosmic representation of the Kashmiri Pandit community. It's only a matter of time and it's only a matter of happenstance that we are still not IDPs, internally displaced persons. And according to me, wo karya bhi pragati mein hai, thanks to demographic inversion in multiple places. If Delhi is not safe, tell me which part of the country is safe. So perhaps my only suggestion to all the youngsters sitting here, with the deepest of humility and with no intention to cause offense, हमारे साथ सेल्फी लेना बंद कीजिए, उससे कुछ नहीं होने वाला है. Just focus on ensuring that you ask the tough questions from the people who are in power. Don't get blown away and don't get carried away by propaganda from either sides. Hindus have to stand aloof regardless of who they elect and still continue to push their deliverables. That is the only bottom line. That's the only way you get the job done. And when I say Hindus, I mean those who are all practicing Hindus regardless of their jati, because I'm constantly accused of something else. So I might as well say this very clearly. As long as the person who is dying is a practicing Hindu, my heart will bleed for that person regardless of the jati. My position on the subject may be nuanced, maybe slightly difficult, or even calibrated for people to agree with. That's a different issue. But when it comes to a matter of life, livelihood, dignity, and protection, I am on the same page as Savarkar. I am on the same page as all the people who stood for Hindu lives, livelihood, and dignity. There is no difference whatsoever. For me, the means don't matter anymore. The ends matter. Thank you.